Фаина, привет.
Здравствуйте, Thierry. Очень рада вас видеть. Как у вас дела?
Hello, Thierry. Happy to see you. How are you doing?
Я очень хорошо, а у тебя?
Тоже все отлично.
Faina is also doing great.
Окей.
Скажите, насколько правдива информация о том, что Франция является страной, где цензура в СМИ теперь в приоритете?
How true it is that France now is a country where the main priority now is to censor the media?
Well, I do believe that it's a little bit more complex than that, because there are interaction between those who are owning the media and those owners of the media are those who are making the politicians. So saying that the media are completely separated of those who are controlling them would be a major mistake. But first, before to look at these topics, we might want, in fact, first to understand the essence of the censorship. So when the censorship is interfering, censorship is coming out when you don't want an information to circulate and to cause damage. So it can be detrimental to those who are supposed, in fact, to receive the information, or this is about, in fact, to protect those who are supposed, in fact, to receive the information. Example, if you have a terrorist organization that tries to propagate its way of looking at things, you want to censorship them because this can be extremely detrimental to your population, and you don't want people to follow up on the ruling that those people want to implement. We can also, as individuals, to protect ourselves and to protect our image, to practice the censorship. But there are other types of censorship that is linked to power. And I do believe that when governments or entity linked to government are practicing the censorship, this is to protect their power. Because at the end of the story, the censorship is linked completely to the control over other people. So basically, censorship, this is not about to prevent people from thinking, but this is about to prevent the thinking to be spread to other people and to influence other people. The thought that you can propagate can be objective or subjective, but this is not up to government to decide who has to think what, why, and how. Because at the end of the story, the censorship can have collateral damage that are absolutely terrible on the mental health of population, but it can be also on the physical health. Censorship prevents different thinking to be spread, which is kind of antinomic to the centuries in which we are living, because there is a lot of tools that has been developed to provide this kind of mechanism and to communicate with others whatsoever we are thinking. I'm thinking about the social networks. It can be Facebook, can be Telegram, it can be Twitter, and so on. The social networks and all these tools allows everyone, in fact, to express themselves, but therefore to develop sphere of influences that escape completely the power and constitute counterpower themselves. What is kind of amusing, between quote, it's ironical. Those mechanisms that has been technological mechanism that has been implemented, they are also subjected to pressure of control, and depending on certain political affinity, they lend themselves into the game of this censorship. We saw it, for example, when during the second electoral campaign in the US between Biden and Donald Trump. We saw it also with Musk and Breton, the commissioner of the European Union, and also between Durov and Macron. So basically, what we are looking at here is that those who have been creating those tools, they are subject, in fact, to pressure from their own government or transversal governments to stop spreading whatsoever the population is not supposed to listen at. So basically, if we are looking at it from another level perspective, we need, in fact, to understand what are the mechanisms that has been implemented, but more than anything else, why they have been implemented. What we are observing today is an opposition of two views. We have those who are protecting the freedom of speech through the First Amendments of the US Constitution, alternative media, and those who are opposing it. And talking about those who are opposing the freedom of speech and the spread of other thought, I call them, in fact, the globaligarchy. Globaligarchy, this is groups of people who have been acquiring so much power due to their fortune that, globally speaking, they can influence the world and they want to format the world the way they see it. And actually, to proceed so, what they have been doing is acquiring most of the mainstream media. So what we are seeing is that the globalists, by controlling the information, they are able, in fact, to influence and to censorship. And what we are observing also is that the journalists who are supposed, in fact, to respect the Munich statement regarding the way to handle the journalism has been completely disappearing. And this is the reason why I believe that the mainstream media right now, they are facing a major threat and they are challenged by the alternative media. Those alternative media today, they are using all those platforms, all those tools to make sure that there will be a sort of second echo as a counterpower to the mainstream media. And what we're observing as a trend is that the population in general, they are looking for information to understand exactly what is going on and to have another view which is a little bit more balanced, because there are a lot of specialists in the world who has different way of looking at things, like me, for Xavier Moreau, like Christelle Neon, like all those people that are in this sphere and that are offering another view in regard of all the events that are occurring in the world. Within the mainstream media, who are completely under the pressure and the control of those global oligarchs, they have, in fact, to follow up on certain rules, and especially what is happening for the last 10 years is the ESG program. Faina, did you hear, do you know what is the ESG program?
Yes.
No.
No? Okay. So these groups who are operating through different transversal organizations, they are meeting within Davos every year. This is what we call the WEF, World Economic Forum, which has been drifting from its course that was defined by the initial founder, who has been murdered several years ago, actually. That was Mr. Najadi. And right after that, this is Klaus Schwab. So this program is about to set up a governance in regard of environment and social. Gigantic funds has been dedicated by those people to put together a full control with a sort of psyops on population. They are working within 4 axes. The first one is the social influence with the LGBT rules, immigration, and so on. And they are enforcing those governance, social governance, through laws with very strict ruling. And whoever is not following up on those rules can be fined in a very harsh manner. Look at what is happening in Canada. Within elementary schools and kindergarten, they are organizing shows with trans, which are subversive and extremely disgusting. And the kids, they are submitted to this kind of show, which should not occur within a school at this level.
Sure.
And if the parents are complaining about it, what is happening? They are fined $45,000 and 3 years in jail. So there is a drift of the essential function of the schools. It is not about to educate the kids about mathematics, about languages, history, geography, whatsoever needs to be taught. It is about, in fact, to force the kids to accept what we as human beings have difficulties to accept it. Then there is the immigration part they are working on. And this is the reason why Donald Trump is a major threat for them. Those people, they have been deciding to bring other population within the westernized country. In Europe, the populations are coming from Middle East, from East Asia, like Afghanistan and Africa. And in the US, this is the South America that is shifting inside of USA. We talk about millions and millions of people which culture is not related to the way that we are handling our way of living. And there is two goals for that. The first one is on the election point of view. You are diluting, in fact, your electorate, and you can control the part of the electorate that you have been bringing in. And the second goal is about to make sure that the mix is so well done that, in fact, there will be no cultural identity, religious identity. You're just transforming the people into consumer. And this is how they are working on controlling the mindset of people. And this is where the censorship is taking place. Any of the media or anybody who talk about being against the immigration in Europe, in the US, here will be censorship immediately. Look at what is happening within the election campaign of Donald Trump. In 2020, Twitter has been censoring, in fact, the current president of the United States. They have been cutting off his Twitter account in a country where it's supposed, in fact, as a First Amendment, to support the freedom of speech. And then there is a second axe. The second axe is about environment. You have a massive campaign in regard of the fact that the CO2 is very bad. But in fact, if there is no CO2 in the atmosphere, which will represent 0.04% of the atmosphere, there will be no plant. And if there is no plant, sorry, we are all dead. It's called the photosynthesis. The plants are absorbing the CO2 of the atmosphere, and they are making oxygen out of it. No CO2, no plant, no oxygen, no human being. We need to look at the real reason of this. The real reason is about, in fact, to push consumer to shift to EVs, meaning electrical vehicle. Because with electrical vehicle, you can control the mobility of people. If in the media today, you are questioning the story of global warming or the change, when it's too hot, it's global warming. When it's too cold, then this is the climate that is changing. So basically, they adapt the language to the situation. It is completely ridiculous. In France, for example, we have an organization that is called ARCOM. The director of the ARCOM is a woman that has been declaring that whoever tried to say that the global warming or the climate change is not true should be censored immediately and should go to jail. So basically, in fact, the censorship is linked to madness. Because if you cannot question something, it means there is no more dialogue. And if there is no more dialogue, it means that we are in an ideology, we are not in a science. Then there is the third axe. The third axe is about the control of the World Health Organization. We saw that during the COVID crisis. And we saw that this virus has been spreading at a speed that was unbelievable. And actually, I've been writing a book about it because this is linked to the story of Ukraine. There is this pseudo vaccine that has been coming out. And people should know that if there was a treatment existing, the FDA would never, ever accept that a vaccine would be injected inside of people. What has been happening suddenly by some kind of tricks, Mr. Bill Gates has been financing most of the media in Europe and in the US and forced the media to forbid to talk about the treatment. So you have an individual that is computer related, engineer, that is controlling the WHO. He is one of the biggest contributors of the WHO. You have this guy that is controlling the media, forbidding to talk about the treatment, because he's financing the setup of the factories to produce the injection. They call this vaccine, it's not.
Yeah.
This is the reason why I was saying that censorship can be detrimental to the health of people. Because and this is numbers that we know from different doctors, 17 million people have been dying from this injection. This is why censorship has been set up, and whoever wanted, in fact, to talk about the effect of the vaccine was completely censored. So basically, in fact, this pandemic is integrated within the full process of a psyops that has been developed all over the world to prepare the world to the next step. Because when you are plunging the population into fear during 2 to 3 years, you can do whatever you want with a population. It will accept any kind of things. And what was the next step? The next step was the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And what is scaring me right now when I observe the population across the globes is that they are not questioning what is happening. They are just submissive in regard of the decisions that are taken by governments that are completely corrupted. And this is why I was relating, in fact, this global oligarchy to the governments that are operating today. Most of the leaders in Europe, they are all coming out of the Global Young Leaders, which is a school inside of the World Economic Forum. You have Maya Sandu from Moldavia, you have Macron from France, you have Trudeau also from Canada. All those guys, they come from this organization. So those people, they have a certain agenda that has been provided by those who are deciding, and they are executing this agenda without taking in consideration the well-being of the population. So basically what we are seeing here is that there is gigantic interactions between the governments, those who are pulling the strings, and all the events that has been occurring. And if you question, in fact, this narrative, the first things that they will say, and they will tag you with it, is conspiracy theories. You know, there is a professor in France of medicine, Professor Raoult, that is saying, when lies is taking lift, the truth is taking the stairs. You can go down very easily, but to tell the truth is very difficult because you need people, you need to train people, you need, in fact, to accommodate them, you need to educate them. And this is the reason why they are very, very scared right now. Very, very scared. Because they know that if Trump is taking over the White House, everything related to the massive corruption that has been covering the story of COVID is going to be set up on the table. And that is the reason why they have been trying to eliminate him twice. And we need to thank Elon Musk for buying the platform in the way that he provides the right tool, in the way that information is spreading the right way. Look what happens between Musk and Thierry Breton. Musk was about, in fact, to welcome Donald Trump on its platform with Tucker Carlson to be interviewed. what happens? You have somebody commissioner from another country, another organization that is completely not related with the political system in the US, that they are to write a letter to the owner of the platform to tell him that he should not interfere within the political campaign when this is called, in fact, interference into the politics of the United States. It's illegal. Of course, they are very scared in Europe that Donald Trump is going to take over because he is going to stop the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, which means, in other terms, that this can be jeopardizing the existence of NATO and the existence of European Union. But due to the fact that what he did was illegal, because this is called infringements within, in fact, the political system in the US, even the president of the Congress has been addressing a letter to Thierry Breton, telling him that he was subject to be jailed. You know, it's a very serious issue, at the point that von der Leyen was obliged, in fact, to fire him when she is part of this organization to put control on people. But they went so far, it was so visible, that at the end of the story, they had to stop. So we have been speaking for at least 1 hour now about the control that those people are putting together through censorship. But they are forgetting something which is very important, is that the population has its own way to censorship government. It's called election, but what we're seeing in France right now is that this election censorship process is not respected anymore. So we are shifting to a sort of dictature. We have two parties in France representing the far right and the far left. They are in majority, and none of their constituents will be part of the new government. What the heck is this? There is another type of censorship that population can exercise. It's called economic censorship. I am going to explain. 2023, Budweiser and Target have been coming out with a product to promote the LGBT culture. So on the can of beer, there was a color of the LGBT blah, blah, blah. And on, in Target, which is a sort of supermarket, okay, you had the lines of clothes for LGBT kids. So what has been happening? It was very interesting. The consumer, they decided, in fact, to boycott those brands and those shops. Those two companies have been losing billions of dollars on the stock market because on top of it, the population has been shorting those brands on the Dow Jones. And the drop was gigantic at the point that those who are organizing this ESG program, they started, in fact, to withdraw because they were very scared due to the fact that their interest was not supported anymore. So as you see, the censorship is a sort of sword with two sides. So as much as it can cut on one side, it can cut on the other side. But in my perception, I do believe that it's not cutting enough on the other side right now, and we need to sharpen a little bit the sword. You know, a writer from the 17th century, Voltaire, who said, I'm going to say it in French and then in English, okay? He say, I disagree with whatsoever you are saying, but I will until my death to give you the right to say it. It seems that the elite today are thinking that population is stupid. Unfortunately for them, there are so many vectors that can spread information right now that people are certainly more aware than they could even imagine. You know, Bruce Lee was comparing a fight with the water in a glass. The fight has to be fluid, it has to be soft. And the truth and information, it's like water. When you are pouring a glass of water on the table and you try to contain it with your hands, you can be sure about one thing, there will be water everywhere because you cannot stop that. You cannot stop people to think. So I guess I'm done for the first question.
Кажется, он ответил на первый вопрос.
I didn't give you the opportunity to speak about. I'm sorry.
Ну, зато он параллельно ответил еще на много твоих вопросов. Жалко, что ты еще больше не сказала. Вот. Какой еще задашь?
This is a big question. Big.
Просто это очень большой вопрос был.
В любом случае, хорошая беседа получилась.
Well, it was still a fantastic conversation because in your answer you actually touched upon many other questions that Faina prepared.
Okay. You know, when I prepare an interview, I will think in a holistic manner. So basically, I look at the topics and I try to look at all the side of the topics and I try to develop to another level.
Я знаю, что у нас сейчас оказывается сильное давление, поскольку у вас иные взгляды на конфликт на Украине. В чем выражается это давление и как вы с этим справляетесь?
Okay, the second question is to you personally. You obviously are under a very serious pressure because of your views at the conflict in Ukraine. How does this pressure manifest itself and how do you cope?
Well, for 10 years, I have been trying, in fact, to educate different type of people. I was invited within the economic forum a little bit everywhere in the world. I have been giving conferences. I was actually included into an international intelligence network in the US. And I tried to do my best to explain to people that what was happening in Ukraine was extremely dangerous. And I'm speaking about the period 2014 to 2022. As much as a lot of people have been listening to me, those who were in charge were not integrating completely the danger, or if they were, this is because they knew because they wanted it. And if they wanted it, this is because they were part of the people that are pushing in the way that this control will be occurring within population. I've been writing to Bruno Le Maire, the former minister of economy, because he has been resigning. He knew what was the problem in Ukraine because I have been describing the rise of Nazism and all the butchery that has been occurring in the Donbass and everything. He knew everything. And when I saw the behavior he has been showing off in regard of what has been happening after 2022 February, I understood that despite the fact that he knew what was the problem, he ignored it completely. Another example, Andrei Parubi, the neo-Nazi of UNO UPA, was invited by the Parliament and the Senate in France in 2018. I have been talking with the secretary of Mr. Larcher, who is the president of the Senate. I have been writing him. I have been explaining what this guy has been doing. And actually, in fact, his visit was unlawful in regard of our constitution due to the fact that he was representing an ideology that is forbidden in France. And despite this, they have been still receiving this individual. I was extremely angry because members of private sector has been trying to attempt to my physical integrity. And I was feeling at that moment, I was living in a country where I do not belong to. So basically, when you are living in a place where you don't feel like it's your own country and your own government is acting like your own enemy, you can imagine, in fact, the feeling I can have every morning when I awake and I look at myself in a mirror. It is a real personal psychology problem for me. My grandfather was fighting against Rommel in Northern Africa during the Second World War. My second grandfather has been shot in Aix-en-Provence by the Nazi. He escaped the shooting, he was alive. This is why I'm here, actually. Mm-hmm. But you can imagine what I can feel when I see Macron that is going to a celebration of the D-Day, and he's inviting a guy whose force were on the top of the cliffs shooting at our people. I feel that my family and myself are personally insulted. The memory of our fighters, the memory of our resistance are insulted by these men and by this government. Despite the emotional side of this story, there is another side. An economy is run with the needs of natural resources, energy, metal, and so on. Who is providing today whatsoever is necessary for the European economy, in fact, to run properly? Russia. How we are going to operate in regard of the fact that the BRICS have been structuring themselves to a point they are going to control most of the resources, natural resources in the world, to make sure our economy are going to run the right way. So this is going to be a major problem. And in the next 10 years, I do believe that Europe is going to collapse. And we are going to live in a level of poverty that is going to be terrible. Macron has been cutting off ties with our former colonies in Africa. And most of those countries right now, when they are looking at France, they are infuriated. He has been assigning a gay guy to promote LGBT culture, way of doing things. I don't know how, if we can call this culture.
Yeah.
To promote it in Africa. You can imagine the rejection that this guy has been facing. On top of it, when you see the individual who is not able to speak, don't know how to speak French, and this guy had his full network, who has been participating to the meddling in Maidan and the destabilization of Ukraine. And in my book, that is called Ukraine, a Warning to the World, I am describing all the NGOs organization from France and Poland that were interfering and that has been organizing the coup. And this guy was very well aware of what was going on. But worse than anything, you are choosing a person that is immature, that is supposed, in fact, to represent France on a diplomatic point of view, when this guy is not even able to articulate a sentence in the right way with a subject, a verb, and a complement. Actually, you know, I need to give you a small anecdote. Last year, I was invited in the Academy of Foreign Affairs in Vienna, Austria, and I was in front of the former ambassador of Vienna in Russia. His name is Mr. Briggs. So he has been coming out with a speech that was off the ground, saying that Ukraine is fantastic, it was integrated Europe, they will be winning the war, and this and that, all the stupidity that you can hear on the media in France. And that Europe will be able, in fact, to interfere within the conflict to help the Ukrainian, la 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 la. And when he finished his speech, I look at him and I say, sir, do you remember what President Jacques Chirac was saying about diplomacy? So he was a little bit surprised, and I say, you know, diplomacy is about to wear the shoes of your opponent and to work with it the entire day until you understand how we think. And at that moment, you will be able, in fact, to go halfway to him. And so basically, I have been telling him, when is the last time that you have been wearing Russian shoes? Because at the end of the story, our neighbor are not going to move from another to another country or another planet. They will be there. And I added, why didn't you put the process necessary to understand the security issues that most of the weapons coming from USA were causing to Russia? This is like an upside down crisis of Cuba. I say, you know, I am solicited by US generals, McInerney, General Vallely, who has been endorsing my book, actually. And I say, when I've been asking them if they will be accepting that Russia will be setting up some ICBM missile within Mexico, their reaction was very simple. They have been saying it will never happen. So I said, it's very simple, you know, diplomacy and international relationship should be bilateral. Whatsoever is not acceptable on one side cannot be acceptable on the other side. And therefore, you will establish a sort of balance where everybody would be able, in fact, to listen to each other. So when I finished my speech, he was feeling kind of very uncomfortable. He stand up and leave the room. And especially when I've been asking him if when he was speaking, he was representing himself, or if he was representing the state of Austria. Diplomacy, it is about, in fact, to have a certain understanding of international relationship, and it asks for maturity, experience, understanding. When you are looking at those, between quote, leaders, for me, it's not leaders, this is like managers, regional managers that are taking over a position at a state level when they do not have the capacity to do it, you understand immediately the crisis we are going through. So if you are asking me what I am feeling for myself, you know, I have a certain age right now. I have been living a good life. I have been traveling a lot over 90 countries. But I am more fearing about most of the population in Europe that do not integrate, at which point we are going through a period of very high risk. We are facing people that are taking decisions without understanding and integrating what are the consequences of their decision, and especially what has been happening 2 days ago. The European Parliament has been voting a text saying that they were allowing Ukraine to use weapons coming from the West to hit Russia with the limitation that has been set up. You know, it makes me think about those kids. You give them 1 centimeter of your finger, and then they take 2, and then they take the hands, and then they take the arms, and so on and so on. They don't understand the way that the people are thinking in Russia. They don't want to understand. They make the people under very high risk that can turn into a nuclear conflict. So they try, in fact, to break every limit. They are pushing the limits systematically until the point that the Russian government is going to say stop. But at that moment, you know, I want to quote a talk that is said in Russia, that they are taking a lot of time, in fact, to climb on the horse, but when it's done, they are riding very fast. In regard of the fact that they have been trying to kill Donald Trump 2 times, there is a strong will to push to the limit and to make sure that Russia will be losing. But Russia is not going to lose. I'm looking at the conflict every day. I look at the operations that the Russian forces are conducting, and I see that the Ukrainian forces are completely wiped out. So what they try to do, if they are pushing the conflict further, what does it mean? It means NATO forces in Ukraine or NATO forces in Russia, like this is the case in Kursk region. They need to understand that at a certain point of time, they need to stop.
Спасибо огромное за потрясающую и интересную беседу. Всегда рада пообщаться.
It is a fantastic conversation. Faina just listens to you. It's incredible, everything that you're saying. She's so glad that you found the time to talk to her. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure, in fact, to discuss with her. And actually, I have a lot of admiration regarding what she has been achieving for the last several years. Despite her young age, she's able, in fact, to interview very high profile all over the world. She's acting in the way that she will be providing the right understanding, in fact, to solve this conflict. What she's doing is absolutely fabulous.
Он на самом деле, Фаина, восхищается тем, что ты делаешь, как многого ты достигла за последние несколько лет, сколько много интервью и с какими людьми ты провела, и он считает, что это будет способствовать пониманию людей во всем мире происходящей ситуации.
Спасибо огромное.
Thank you very much.
Спасибо большое, Faina, and have a good day. Thank you very much
You
for
too.
your interview.
Thank you for this interview so much.
Пока.
Bonne journée.
Merci.